Well, like so many of you, I'd like to start by asking a question. My question is, what was your favorite movie released in the last 3 to 5 years? Now, you don't have to answer that, but I'm willing to wager that a majority of the answers that we would get from this classroom fall into one of 4 categories. Those categories are sequel, prequel, remake, and reboot. And the reason I'm willing to wager that they fall into one of those 4 categories is because it seems like that most movies nowadays seem to fall in those 4 categories. So as an example, I'd like to show you. Here we have a list of the main blockbusters of 2013. If we take a look, only 4 of those movies did not fall into any of those 4 categories. Likewise, if we take a look at the blockbusters of 2014, you'll see that only 3 of those movies do not fall into any of those categories. So now, sometimes we don't realize that what we're going into does fall into those categories. So for instance, I'd like to have an example here. Here we have a list of movies that, personally, if you ask me, I think are pretty original. They seem like movies that you come out of thinking like, wow, that was a good movie. I've never seen one like that before. But I'd like to ask, what do these movies all have in common? Yes?
They're all remakes.
They're all remakes. Which is shocking for people, especially a movie buff like myself, that movies like The Bourne Identity and The True Lies are both remakes. Which I did not know. Yes. So, sometimes when we go into to see these movies, we intentionally go to see them knowing that it's a remake. For example, Total Recall. I went in to see this movie knowing that I was seeing the remake of the Schwarzenegger movie. Personally, not a big fan of the remake. I kind of fell asleep in it. However, like we just saw, there are some times when we don't realize what we're seeing as a remake. For instance, how many of you knew that the beloved movie The Wizard of Oz was indeed a remake? Yes, but not many people did. So, I'm not saying that remakes are necessarily good, and I'm not necessarily saying that remakes are bad. Most remakes all just are a matter of preference. For instance, do you prefer the original Spider-Man or the remake of Spider-Man? It's all a matter of preference. Personally, I go for the originals. Although sometimes we get the bad remakes. And we're going to put aside sequels and prequels for a minute, and I'm going to talk about bad remakes. Not that I'm pointing any fingers or anything.
Oh, well.
No.
Yeah.
But the movie that I'd like to refer to is Psycho, my all-time favorite movie. And I'm not saying that Psycho was a bad remake simply because I love the original so much, but I'd like to point out why I found that the remake was bad. Now, here we're just going to see a quick clip of the remake right alongside the original one. Now, those who have seen the original and the remake of Psycho, you'll know that the remake is a shot-for-shot exact remake of the original. All the shots are the same, all the dialogue is the same. The only thing that's different is different actors, as well as it's in color. This is just a quick clip of it. I was going to show another one, but I didn't want to spoil anything from the movie. So, the reason I consider this a bad remake is because it reminds me of a classroom term that we all know as cheating. When we write an essay, we have the potential of creating something original and unique, and something that is very creative and definitive of ourselves. So when we copy somebody's essay and we pass it off as our own, then we're basically just doing just that. We are taking their ideas and turning them around and saying, these are ours. Much as how Gus Van Sant took what Alfred Hitchcock did and called it his own. So, you may just say, well, it's just a remake, like it only happens once in a while. Well, actually, it happens more often than we think. According to StephenFollows.com, 37% of movies from 2005 to 2014 were remakes. Add that to the 50% that were sequels and prequels, and we have 13% of Hollywood movies in a 10-year gap that are original. Which is kind of shocking if you think about it. So what does this tell us? Does it tell us that Hollywood is running out of ideas? Well, maybe. But one of the reasons why Hollywood is continuing to make remakes is because we were paying to go see them. We are paying to go see something that we are familiar with. We're paying to see something that we know that we'll like, rather than risking our money to go see something original and something we have no idea what is going to come out of it. So, to quote this, Mark Cockropowicz of the Huffington Post said that the most anticipated releases will continue the pattern of remakes. Why? Because the movie studios know that as much as we say that we hate remakes, sequels, spin-offs, and adaptations, we'll buy a ticket to see them. Hollywood is relying on expanding its proven commodities rather than offering us new ideas. So, I'd like to ask that question that I started at the beginning again, but this time change it a bit. This time I'd like to ask, what was your favorite original movie released in the last 3 to 5 years? And, well, you don't have to answer it, it's just a rhetorical question. But if you were looking at Stephanie when I asked that, she honestly thought, I don't know what to answer to that. Because we've gotten to the point where that's how our movies are, just like Ryan was saying. Our movies are remakes, and they're all sequels, and they're all prequels. And sometimes we just don't know what an original movie is anymore. Not so much that they're not coming out, as so much that we're scared to see them. And so I would like to issue the challenge for you guys to not be afraid to see something new. Not even just about movies, but about life, to bust out of your horizons and be willing to try something new. And as an example of this is an example of a movie, Carnival of Souls. I don't think any of you guys have heard of that, because it is an independent film that I had never heard of before. And I just watched it just thinking, well, it's just a movie, I'll give it a try. And it became one of the scariest movies that I have ever seen. So I would like to issue that challenge to you guys to break out of your comfort zone and be willing to try something new.